Welcome back. Wow, you are amazing. You just so incredible. I just love the way that you're hanging in there. You're coming back for more. All right. So welcome back to the lab of a stronger foundation. And I'm your hostess with the mostest, Dr. Small, the executive director of a stronger foundation. Okay. Offering great services to children K through 8. Okay. Remember, the first step to aligning with success is to make sure the mindset is intact. All right. Education alone is not going to do it. Trust Dr. Small, okay? There's a lot of children, because think about it. If 98% of the children never grow up to fulfill their dream and their purpose, how is that possible, right? Because that includes the ones that graduated in the top 5% and top 1%. Somehow they missed the mark. That happens only because they didn't have the mindset, okay? If you have the mindset and if you have that discipline on the control, you're going to align with your purpose. Trust me, okay? There's more to tell you. All right, so we wanted to continue to talk about some of the different principles here, okay? So I want to move on. I have a little pen here. And we want to continue talking about, one day we talked about reconstructive surgery, and to make sure you understand that, I believe that that's the ethical way. Because when you reconstruct, that means you're going to restore, get their education back on track. I know that when they get to fifth grade and you realize, good Lord, my fifth grader can't read, or my sixth grader can't read, and they don't understand basic math, operational skills, then you feel like it's over. No, it's not over. The ethical thing to do is to fix it. And that's what we talked about when we said reconstructive surgery. All right. Listen, families, I want to remind you, okay, when it comes to this education, it's like leading your children. You're leading your children, okay? So why not lead them where you want them to go, where you want them to end up, okay? So if you didn't want your child to drink certain water, would you lead them there? Because if you lead them to the water, probably going to drink it, right? So then it's almost like, instead of leading them to the bad water, okay, if you lead them to poor education and poor success skill, then that's what they're going to embrace, okay? So instead, don't lead them there and hope that they won't drink. So you're like, well, I'm going to lead them to this, poisonous water, and I hope they don't drink it. Honey, I love you. Don't drink it. I really love you. I want you to be safe. Please stay safe. Don't, but you can't lead them somewhere of danger, you know, lead them to an electrical wire system and tell them that it's safe to play here. And then you say they don't want them to be shocked. That's not how it works. So when it comes to education, you have to lead them where you want them to end up. Okay. Don't forget, I hear all the time, because I always ask parents, I always start with a question. What does success look like for you? When you think about your child in the future as a success, what does that look like to you? Okay. And, the last one I spoke to said, the child is well-rounded. They're able to have a decent conversation and all of that, So a lot of times they don't really understand that they can impact the psychological well-being of a child. Okay. So a lot of times too, what we tend to do, we kind of almost force our children to trace our footsteps. All right. So the same path that we took, we allow them to take it. Okay. And I always say here, if we're in a situation here where we can't afford to give our children academic enrichment. Remember we talked about this before? Are you the parent of one of these children? Which one is more likely? I'm just asking. I'm not even suggesting. Which is more likely to invest in academic enrichment consistently? From your experience, we have one family. Don't forget, I see families all day long, all the time. They come to me, and there's a group of families of one of these children that's always going to say to me, all right, well, I want my child to succeed, so please just give me the academic success plan. And I have another family that's going to say, oh, well, all right, well, thanks for the information. And we'll work on our finances and we'll get back to you. Or I have to talk to my significant other. I'm like, you know, you don't have to talk to no significant other. Because what do you have to talk about? Well, you're going to go home and say, honey, you know, even if we don't invest in the academic enrichment and not just random tutoring we're talking about, after I show you the evaluation results and I show you what it aligns with and I show you evidence of graduation rate, I show you how no child seems to have gaps and suddenly they just disappear as they go to middle. I show you where your child's headed and you tell me that you're going to go home and you're going to discuss it with your significant other. And so you're telling me that the both of you sit down together, and after you tell them that the child's aligned with mediocrity, with experience, mediocrity, economic disparity, you're trying to tell me that your spouse and you say, well, let's just sit on it for a little while longer. Let's see what happens. That's unethical to do that, first of all right? The only reason why the child has these poor gaps is because somehow, as parents, it was ignored and it was known that they existed, but somehow it was ignored. All right. So then we allow the children to go through the same motion that we went through. And in a lot of cases, a lot of us was right here. We had all these gaps that never got closed. So then we grew up, we got a random job, and we're struggling, working 2 and 3 jobs, and we're struggling. All right. I don't want anyone to tell me that they did everything that I'm saying. They had a strong education and they're still working 3 and 4 jobs. Don't tell me that, because I don't understand it. Okay. So maybe somehow it's realistic. I don't understand it. I don't understand that language at all. So don't even tell me, because I do believe that, you know, you work hard and you get a good education. I believe when you balance it out, remember, I'm not miseducation alone to success. No way. I am balanced education with mindset enrichment plus our trademark ingredients. You're going to put that child 2 or more academic years ahead. You're going to take them through an innovation stage. They're going to align with their purpose. All right. Now, how does that work? You know, you can't make anyone align with their purpose. That's not what's being said. But you can make them aware. Just like after we do the evaluation, not one parent can say that they didn't know. You knew, and you made a conscious decision to neglect it anyway. To stand back and say, let's see if we push the child into the ocean without a life vest, if they're going to drown. That's exactly, no. I know people like to say, it's not the same thing. It's a different scenario. One is figurative and the other is realistic. Okay, so realistically speaking, that's exactly what you're doing. It's all figuratively, you're like throwing them overboard a cruise ship and hoping they won't drown. And once you realize, if you didn't know the area was slippery and they accidentally fell overboard, that's one thing. But we're talking about people who knowingly allow their children to continue knowing that their children is on their way to slip, fall overboard. And I'll talk to my spouse and we'll see what happens. And they turn away. I have evidence of hundreds of people who came, got the evaluation, which is $79. And when I tell them to fix the issue, there's a package deal. 1 week, a lot of times I don't want to say prices online because then that could, it could be held accountable, but you're talking about less than $10 an hour, and people walk away from it and say blame the spouse, and they know that if they want to go and buy a fancy handbag, they're not asking no spouse, even if it costs $300. There's no spouse involved. If you want to go, if you see a pair of shoes that you love, if you're a shoe person and you love that shoe, if your nails, the lady says to get that fancy design is going to be $300, and yeah, I can believe how much nails cost. But if that's what they tell you, you don't discuss it. You don't call home, babe, how do you feel about if I get these nails? They're $300. You don't have to discuss that. That's your decision. The same way when you come to me and tell me about discussing with spouse, I know it's just an excuse, and I'm sorry for the child. I'm sorry for the child that ends up having to endure that. Okay, so yes, we have certain families are going to make the investment and the commitment, and other families are going to walk away and say that they'll get back to us. All right. Meanwhile, the child keeps growing up, and then you see them later here in secondary. All right. So I won't dwell on that because there are just so many different implications about that. All right. So we want to make sure that we don't just allow them to follow our path where maybe we didn't properly develop our skills to the highest capacity, and now we're living a life that's close to mediocre. Okay, because if we can't afford to invest in the things that are meaningful, that's mediocrity. That's economic disparity. Okay, because education shouldn't be one of those areas that we cannot invest in. It shouldn't. Now, if you're going to have an education plan for college, you might have a Gerber Life plan, but if you don't prepare the child to maximize that, then what's the point of that? Okay, what you want to do is invest right now between kindergarten and second grade. They can get into that academic success plan for kids, which is going to take them strategically so that they align perfectly with their purpose. And again, I said you can't force someone to walk in their purpose, but you at least, prepare them, and at least they'll have an idea. Oh, this is my purpose. This is what I was supposed to do. This is my area of interest and passion. At least that will be happening. So they'll have an idea. They won't have to go to some random job and fight for recognition and fight for promotion and fight for security, and instead of understanding, okay, this is just my job, this is my career, but I know my purpose, and I'm using this job to prepare me financially so I can walk into my purpose or support my purpose. Okay, so we do encourage them to follow our path, and it's like what ends up happening is that they now leave a failure blueprint for their children. So watch the generations. Watch what's happening since the time that Dr. Martin Luther King fought for our freedom. Sorry. And all the other activists that fought for our freedom. Watch what has happened. What have we done now that we have full access to education? What have all people? I'm not just going to pick up one. You guys might be thinking, oh, she's just referring. No, because I believe that what they did, okay, what these great freedom fighters did has benefited all races. It has. It has. Okay? Because now we're all able to play together. And if you were a little Caucasian person, imagine what life would be like if you still couldn't play with this awesome person down the street, and the other way around. You have this cool girl because you guys you click, your personalities click, but you're not allowed to play with this girl because her skin tone's too light or her skin tone's too dark. You can't share the water fountain. So there's a lot that has been done that has benefited all of us. Because believe it or not, when somebody believes that they're better than someone else, they have mental slavery. Okay? So it's the same thing. Both can end up in a situation where they experience mental slavery. Both. Because believing that I'm better, that's ridiculous, right? Believing that one's better, it's ridiculous. All right, so we got the point with these. Okay, so we don't want to leave. We don't want our children leaving a blueprint of failure for the next generation. So ever since that happened, what have we seen in school? Now that we have access, now that Ruby Bridges is one little brown girl walk into a school by herself, couldn't bring mom and daddy, and had to face the challenges that she faced. She did all of that to help us to be able to take advantage of education. And you mean to tell me that now we're still down here? We're still at the bottom academically? You're talking to Dr. Small. You're trying to tell me, because I have the data. I would never be on a screen talking about stuff that I'm imagining. The scores are low for all the children, all skin tones, low scores. Okay? This brain stuff that I'm talking about, it ain't just for one race. Okay? I do focus sometimes on the brown race because, you know, that's what I reach out for. That's my goal, that's my vision, that's my mission, is that their scores will start to focus more on using our neurons to learn instead of using our neuron to make excuses. All right. I'm for both. I'm for all children. Again, I don't. You will see. You meet me. You'll see. I love all people. I love all my skin tones. All my skin tones. I reach out to the brown because the scores are the lowest. And maybe if it was the other way, maybe I would have reached out the other way. All right, now, so I'm going to move on to all the subsequent generations. Okay, when this one grows up and don't understand the value of education, he's going to pass it on to their kids. Okay, they're going to say, I don't have money to send you to enrichment, knowing that it's what happens between grades K and 2 that's going to impact secondary learning. And when you get to the great divide where we're deciding, okay, what can I do with my life based on the foundation that I have built? They don't have the foundation. They can't just go toward greatness. Okay? They're forced to take the road for which they've been prepared. Oh, that was beautifully said. They're forced to take the road for which they've been prepared. All right, parents? And it's you. It's you. Blame the teacher all day long, but it's you. What's happening? What's the child hearing at home? Okay. So if you happen to have a young child right now between K and 2, I want to tell you something. Absolutely no excuse. That child has the same opportunity as any other race. They have the same opportunity as any other race to get to their purpose, to reach the top of their potential, to surpass expectations. If they're a certain age. Now, I know I talk a lot about K through 2, but remember, we have an academic success plan for kids. That's a 36-month program that when we take a child in between kindergarten and second grade, we work with them for a total of 36 months. And then they leave, whatever they graduate at. So let's say you're kindergarten, they do kindergarten first, second. Now the challenge with that is because they're very young, still at second grade, developmentally, they may need to continue to just a little, not full time, but continue to remind them. And plus, don't forget, at certain ages, they're just not developmentally ready to embrace certain concepts. All right. So, but we still like to take them in because when you do that, you develop success habits that can be learned very early. Okay. When they go home, if they're sitting there and they're watching if they go home and you turn on the TV and whatever channel you got them watching, you're developing certain habits. If one of them, instead of going home, because one thing I see that my scholar parents do is I admire them, but they barely give the child a chance to develop poor habits. They maximize their exposure to successful activities. Yep, that's what they do. So that means that after school, and they come to our facility, and we develop, all we do is we develop their skills to the higher end of taxonomy. That's basically what we're doing. Okay, we have education, we have mindset. We're doing something with mindset as well, elevated mindset. And after they leave us, I think I'd be exhausted, but then parents go to Little League. Some of them go to swimming. Some of them go to violin practice, just other enrichment, and so, and when they're done for the evening, they have their family time and they go to bed. And on the weekends, instead of just binge watching some one random TV channel, they just keep them active and involved. They take them again on Saturday to play their little league sports. Maybe they practice during the week and the games are on the weekend. And I think that is awesome, because what it's doing is teaching them. Now, this child, our scholars that we have, whatever race, when they grow up, that is the practice that they continue. And if anyone's watching, regardless of your race, I want you to know, we would love to have you. It doesn't matter. It's not about being brown or white. It's all of you. Dr. Small love all the children. So I know I talk a lot about brown children. And again, it's because I'm trying to encourage the families that don't always want to invest in the education when the child is very young. I try to explain to them to do it. That's the time to do it, because when you wait, then you get in trouble with the human growth and development. When you can't talk to the child anymore, you can't reach them anymore. You've lost them. You're gone. Okay. So I want to hear from some people, grades K through 2. Get your child involved in that excellent learning. Okay. So I guess it brings me to the point where now I'll say, you can't say you didn't know. So if you're still choosing to allow your children to develop these failure skills or mediocre skills that's going to align them with just that, then you can't say you didn't know. Okay. You can't say that Dr. Small didn't tell you there is one ethical path, and that ethical path means preparing your child to succeed, whatever that success looks like. And you can't just say, I'm just doing it my way. There's a way that leads to success. Okay. And it involves being disciplined at a very young age. Okay. Before you end up being an adult with all these responsibilities and you don't have time to chase your dream or to become your best self. Okay. Wonderful. All right. So we're going to move on. We're going to talk about, remember, pampering the kids is not the same as preparing. I think that's a typical mistake I see with parents. They think that because they love their children and they embrace their children, that means they are preparing their children to succeed. Not because you're your child's best friend, not because you sit at the table and just, you don't yell at them, you don't scream at them, and you have your friends, your best friends. You think that you're preparing them to succeed, but poor education is a handicap. Okay, you're restricting their ability to succeed on that side. All right, and you're just thinking that they automatically develop good mindset skills. No, that has to be taught, and that's why we teach it at a stronger foundation with our curriculum. Right, what you say is what you are. Remember, you can purchase your copies, a mentor text and an activity guide, and you buy a copy, and then you can sign up and come to the facility and we can do it live. You can do a live character circle, and it's just a way of teaching them how to use their words or positive affirmation to align themselves to succeed and to help their efficacy. Self-efficacy is believing that you'll succeed at the things that you try. And a lot of times children won't do it. The amygdala is going to say, listen, 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 don't go there because you're not good at that. You ever heard a child say that? I'm just not good at that. All right. And that's because there's a fear, there's a limitation. It's saying, don't even try it. You're going to fail. If there's a chance of failure, why are you going to get into that race with your friend? This is not just for fun. If you're not going to win the race, then just pretend that you're hurt. Just start limping, okay? Or, if you don't want to try to learn a skill, just make an excuse, okay? All right. So there you go. Mhm. So we said that there's only one path, one ethical path, and that's preparing your child to succeed. All right. So if you're not preparing them to succeed, remember Ben Franklin said you're preparing them to fail. All right. So don't prepare them to die, because you may save their life physically, but then they grow up to a mental death. There's a lot of people that's struggling. Don't let them fool you. When they come out in public and they have the biggest smile on their faces and they're laughing the loudest, a lot of times those people are the very ones who are struggling. All right. So let me move on real quickly. And I want to say that you have two paths: one success, one is failure. All right. And it's a hard pill to swallow. Okay. Understanding that there's only two paths, guys. There's not 10. You can succeed or fail. Remember, our definition of success is that when you align with your purpose. So you're going to either succeed or you're going to fail to succeed. You're going to live a mediocre life with economic disparities. All right. And then it's going to trigger down from one generation to the next. So if your family haven't gotten it together yet, then maybe it's because the previous generation have not practiced the alignment skills that lead to success, which is define the education from very early. Okay, get a grade. When I say define, I mean define the present situation of education. I don't want to see brown children at the bottom in every single school. That's what I see when I get on the computer. And when you come to me, I like to show you on the computer. I'm going to ask you what's the name of your school, and I'm going to take you through their data that's released, show you the achievement data and who's getting level 5. And what provokes me is that no matter what race, a very small percentage is hitting like a level 5 in their level. And I know that has a lot more to do than just the test, because sometimes the test makers, don't forget it's based on their perception. So whatever answer is based on their perception. So everyone doesn't think the same. So I always feel like if the kids narrow it down to 50%, between the two answers, the two correct answers, I feel like they've done well, because again, that is based on the person who made the test. And I know they have a team that works on the test questions to make sure it's valid. But still, sometimes I've seen I've seen answer keys that didn't make sense. And I'm like, how could that be the right answer? So sometimes it has to do with that. So you are leading your children down one or the other path. There's no way you can say, I'm not leading them down any path you are. If you're not actively building their education, the gaps, because that's what they're going to stand on in life. Like a house, gotta have a foundation, right? It has, and that foundation has to be strong. You can't compromise. Okay, so that's what they're doing now. If you really want them to succeed in life and just align with their best self, that's what you have to do, families. And you are leading them down that path. So if you're not intentionally developing, because you don't want a gappy foundation. I know that's the norm and that's what's common, but that's not that lines up with purpose. Remember what we're doing here. We're not talking about how to get your child to graduate in the top 1%. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how to get your child aligned with their life purpose, because that's what truly matters. That's what they were created to do. All right. They weren't created to necessarily be the smartest person in the world that can discuss every skill and that can communicate on every level. And that's how we mark brilliancy and success, is ones that knows about everything. But if it's not their life purpose, that's not, they have not aligned with meaning in their life. All right. And they still struggle at home, because as long as you don't align, you're going to always hear the voice calling out to you. All right. So you are leading them, realize it or not. They're on a journey with you, and you're helping them to either succeed or you're taking them down the road to fail. And remember, we talk about mediocrity and success. This little guy, he had successful versus mediocrity. Parents, we go through that too. All right. So we have our mindset. If we have a mediocre mindset, we devalue education and we're thinking, look, we're not dead. We're making it, but we're barely making it. Because again, if you have to step away from an ethical endeavor, such as giving a child a rich education foundation, okay? Remember, foundation don't mean they graduated top 5 or 10. It just means that they have a certain level of education by a certain time that when connected with the level of mindset and whatever other trademark touches we put on it, that is the ethical path, okay? So, I was listening to a small podcast the other day. It wasn't even it was short. It was a short. And Oprah, I'm going to quote her. She said, "Your real job in life is to figure out what it is you are called to do." End quote. I want to read it again. It says, "Your real job in life is to figure out what it is you're called to do." So from the moment you're born, end quote, from the moment you're born, you start to search. You're not physically searching, but you're being sought out. Your purpose in life begins to search for you. It starts to pull you toward it. So that's where personality comes. When you develop this personality, it's based on that calling. You start being a certain way, don't even realize why that's happening. But it's because your purpose starts to seek you before you start to seek it. All right. And I want to be careful there because maybe some other nice fancy theory might say you're actually searching it too from your born. I don't know. But I do believe that it starts to pull on you very early, and your decisions in life is based on that. But sometimes we become, let's see, how can I do this so you can see? Sometimes you just miss it, you passed it, or, we're trying to align with purpose. And actually, I don't think the purpose move. I think we're the ones that, let's do this. Yeah. I think we're the ones that purpose keeps coming towards us, but then sometimes we make a decision, it puts us here. Make another decision, it takes us there. Some decision pulls us back further away from it. All right. Some position turns us upside down, and purpose is waiting for us all that time. The purpose is waiting for us. So you may have a job, you may get a job, and you may get a career. And that's what's typical. People graduate from high school and then they go into a career. All right. But that's not necessarily your purpose. Don't matter if you're making $250,000 a year. If that's not your purpose, it's a matter of time. We start to hear the call again. It's like, come on, line up, align yourself. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So if your life is in turmoil, okay, and if this is you again, remember, and you're spinning and you're turning and all kind of stuff is happening, you're going backwards, you're going forward, you don't even know if you're going, if you're coming. Okay, remember, this is the time where a lot of people start to take substances because they feel themselves going into entropy. Remember, they're falling apart. You can't think straight. You almost feel like you're divided, like you're 10 different people, right? And sometimes people take substances because that helps to stop the spinning a little bit or to slow down the spinning, right? But that's what we're born for. So if you have a job or a career, that's just temporary until you figure out your life purpose. That's what it is. That's what it is, right? Yeah. All right. So you're at that point where you have a job or a career, your fruits, I think your fruits are still hovering. You can reach some more of them, especially if you just happen to have a great career and you're making all that money. You definitely can, get nicer cars. You might get nicer cars. You might get a nice house. There's a lot that you'll get, but there's always going to be something that is missing. All right, I have to speed up here because I want to say the journey through. So the journey through the wilderness. Okay, I'm going to go to a biblical principle here. So the journey through the wilderness was 40 days, 40 nights. And I feel like that happened because they kept on making the same mistake over and over. And when we talk about generation of struggles and generation of mediocrity and generations of experiences, economic disparity, I wonder if that's because we keep following the same pattern of resisting the education foundation that's going to propel us. All right. Remember, I'm not saying you gotta graduate 1%. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that the education that we get has to be of a certain quality by a certain period of time. That's the education we want. Okay. So they were walking around 40 days, 40 nights in circles, couldn't get into the promised land. Can't align with your purpose because you keep making, every time you get to this point, you turn right when you should have turned left. Every time you get to this point, you flip over, you do something and it misaligns you. And that's what's frustrating because you're so close that you can almost touch it now. See, when you're young and little, you again, I feel like maybe it's coming towards you, but you don't know nothing about purpose, especially if no one ever taught you. Remember, I didn't learn it until I was probably 35. I don't remember the exact age, but I remember sitting in a church when that pastor finally said something about purpose, and I was taken aback. I'm like, what's that? Purpose? And I realized I was born to fulfill a purpose. And from that day, I started chasing after it. All right. And that's a situation that a lot of parents end up in where we start to leave our kids to chase our purpose. But thank goodness, things worked out. I keep my eyes very open. Okay. So I'm going to stop here because we're getting up there in length of the video. And then what we'll do is we'll come back, we'll pick up from where we left off. And I think I can safely begin our next series very soon. Okay, we're going to begin our next series. So thank you for joining me in the lab today. I'm saying welcome to a stronger foundation. I mean, you're about to leave us right now. So whatever you do, remember a lot of this is aimed at parents properly guiding children, but I want you to understand you can apply a lot of these principles. All right. And hopefully one day I'll see you in a parent information session and we can just connect. All right. Until our next session, I wish you all the best. I want you to make some great choices that's going to align you with purpose. All right. Later.